Welcome to Coffee and Contemplation. I'm Robin.
I'm Heidi.
And this is part 1 of our discussion of Chapter 9, The Piggyback. So first off, it is really hard to believe we're already here.
Right?
I feel like we just started the rewatch like a minute ago. But the summer has already like flown by, so it's so surreal that we're already at the season finale of season 4. But this will definitely be a multi-episode discussion given just how much there is to talk about. I've tried to not stretch the season out in that way to have multiple episodes per chapter, but this one warrants it. I think there's no way to discuss this in its entirety without breaking it up. So plus, I mean, this episode is heavy. Mm-hmm. Especially given where we're planning to break, where we're going to split the episode up. But I'm not going to spoil that for you yet. You're going to have to see where we end. So, diving right in, we don't have coffee, but let's proceed with contemplation.
Yes.
So the episode, we start in Russia. We had that kick-ass ending last time. And I remember because Jenna and I discussed it in terms of, we're hyped for this battle. And then chapter 9 opens in Russia with a very quiet setting, at least at first, but we've got Yuri working away on Katinka while Antonov and Murray are chatting. And I like the little detail in the background of Murray talking to Antonov and saying, like, you in Indiana. Yeah. I was like, yes, please.
Yes.
Although I was a little worried, like, all right, did we just redshirt him? Like, did we just sign his death certificate? I hope not.
I feel like we will probably see him again.
I hope so.
He's definitely good and valuable enough at this point in the season that if they were just going to if they were going to kill him, they would kill him on screen. You feel?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if they were going to kill him, they probably would have had him go, they would have had Murray stay with Yuri. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Had Antonov go back into the prison with them and die, there.
Right.
But we see Yuri take a piece out of the engine and hide it, and then we get this whole thing with the my woman make noise thing.
Ugh.
Yeah, pretty much my thoughts.
But I think that's Yuri being a douchebag and not the show being misogynist.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, and it's him basically diverting their attention from what he's actually doing. But inside, though, Hop and Joyce.
Yes, this scene is so great.
First they change clothes, and I like them kind of sneaking little glances at each other, which it never feels skeezy when it very easily could have.
Oh, yeah.
And they have their little heart-to-heart about, their choices, and I like the way that all plays out. Hop taking ownership of how much danger he put her in, while Joyce reminds him that it was still her choice either way. He didn't make her.
Yeah. Well, in my reaction to hearing Hopper debate about, whether he wants to get the veal or the lasagna, I feel like every time I have watched this scene, my reaction to that has been Hop, you have been in a Russian prison camp for how many months now? Get both.
Yeah.
Get both of them. I would just like him to be able to eat. It's just a sign of my affection for Hopper.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, I love the way that builds. And I love the metaphor and the double entendre of everything where he's talking about food and she's just I want to make out with you.
He's really? That's it? Well, but I like that he's yeah, I've been starving for months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm dreaming about the breadsticks.
But at the same time, we do get kind of the sense that he's been dreaming about the breadsticks, but he's been dreaming about eating the breadsticks with her. It genuinely is both. He's dreaming of survival. He's dreaming of going back to his old life. He's dreaming literally of food, but what he really wants is her. And so you almost get this sense of he needs her as much as he needs food to survive.
This really feels like a nice blend of all 3 seasons between them. There is a bit of the energy that we had from season 3, but because it's meshed with some of those really intimate and personal moments they had in season 2, as well as some of the dire energy, towards the beginning anyway, of season 1, it really feels like we've, I know I've been saying this a lot, I feel at the sort of the end of this season, but we've really built to this to this moment. And I was not sure how I would feel about it because of season 3 and because of how it all ended. And then especially since we haven't seen them together through most of season 4, it was kind of like, I liked their reunion a lot. It was like, but when we get here, when things are calm enough where we can get to this moment where they can actually like kind of address this question of like, we have the date to get to, etc. Will it work? And it absolutely does.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because it could have gone in a very broad direction. It could have felt not earned, but it doesn't. It feels very earned.
Mm-hmm. And the other side of that too is that, like, based on some of the things that Jenna said in chapter 8 from her perspective, it's like there does seem to also be, you know, picking up from her observation about how, like, yeah, he was kind of a dick in season 3.
Yeah.
And there feels like there's sort of a between the lines acknowledgement of that. And I really appreciate that. I see that more in this moment than I did in chapter 8. But I like that she brought it up then, because I feel like it made me aware of it when we got here. And it's real subtle. It's not super over the top, but it's there. And I think that's what I mean when I say it's a nice blend of kind of everything that they've been through together that we've been a part of.
Yeah.
And it's so successful for that reason.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like once they start kissing it, like when they back into the like the like stack of like crates in the filing cabinet, you know, the way that they laugh, it's like such a nice, silly little human moment. And I don't know if that was an outtake, like if that was actually Harbour and Ryder, like if that was like one of the outtakes they did, and like, but in the edit they kept it in because it was such a nice little moment. It's such a small thing, but it sets it apart from a lot of the other relationships on the show that I can't imagine a moment like that between any of the other couples. And that's not to say like, oh, they don't have familiarity and warmth and maturity. I just mean that there's something about this particular relationship that moment really embodies. And I just really like that. Yeah.
I mean, my feeling about the whole scene is like, in conclusion, more kissing, less monsters.
But the phone does ring and interrupts them. And I like that it's the perfect amount of both. There's the beat of disappointment from both of them, but then quickly followed by them both like hop darts forward, and Joyce is like, be careful. Like they both feel that disappointment. Like, oh, we got to stop making out. But then also like, but this is really, really important.
Yeah.
And I like that we get just the right amount of both. It's great. But then we don't get to hear the conversation because we cut back to Hawkins, in which our Hawkins group reviews the plans, their phases. Phase 1, Hawkins trio to meet Erica at the playground where she will signal Lucas and Max when they're ready. Phase 2, Max baits Vecna. Phase 3, Dustin and Eddie draw the bats away. Phase 4, Flambe. The group sets back out to Eddie's trailer, and they go through the gate. I love Dustin's little be careful to Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if the girls make fun of him. I like Steve's superhero landing.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And honestly, I completely forgot about the capital M moment between Steve and Nancy when he helps her up. You know, the proximity.
Yeah.
It's cute. Once everyone is through, Steve tells Dustin and Eddie not to be heroes, and
even putting aside what Eddie does later on, if they stuck to the plan and all they did was lure an enormous horde of demon bats to their location to clear the way for their friends, what is that if not heroic? Of course it's heroic. The scene would not bother either of us nearly so much if there was a follow-up line from Steve saying, yes, you are. As in, like Eddie says, we're not heroes. And Steve is like, yes, you are.
Maybe Eddie doesn't believe it, but like, it should have been said.
Yeah.
Just the fact that Eddie has even been there all this time. I mean, granted, he doesn't have a lot of options in terms of where can he go, where he's safe, but he could have been like, this is too much for me to deal with. This isn't my fight. I didn't ask for this. Just give me a place to hide and you guys go deal with all the monsters. They could have tried to just hide him somewhere else. They could have hid him at the Wheelers for, you know, the way they did with Elle. Like, they could have figured out a way around it, but he didn't. He chose to stick around. But then we do get Eddie telling Steve to, you know, make him pay, which, hell yeah, that's also for Chrissy.
Yep.
We get our series intro, and then we come out of that with California crew at a gas station where Jonathan is trying to get a flight while Elle wanders off and gets inspired by a billboard for the mind fight. I think it's curious that neither Mike or Will notice her just drifting away.
I know.
But the montage of Elle's Mindscape memories is pretty cool. I did enjoy that a lot. They brainstorm about where to find a bathtub, to which Argyle has a solution.
I love Argyle in this scene. I mean, let's be real. I love Argyle in every scene. But I love the way that Argyle just accepts everything that comes at him without judgment, without question. He's just like, mind fight, sick. And then she's like, I need a bathtub. And he just says so, like, with such acceptance, yeah, you got to be clean to enter the mind. And what that made me think of was like martial arts films where you would have some sort of like ritualistic thing that you have to do like before the final battle or whatever. Yeah, like just his reactions to things is just endlessly amusing to me.
Back in Hawkins, in the Creel house, we get Max, Lucas, and Erica using their lanterns to search for Vecna's whereabouts, which Erica finds. And Erica runs out to the playground, they signal one another with the flashlights, which a passing neighbor, one of the instigators from the town hall meeting, just happens to notice, along with the lights in the Creel house.
Fucking douche.
Which then leads us to Andy updating Jason with the new lead.
Jason is looking a little rough.
Yeah, seriously, I love the makeup that they're doing on Mason Dye. Like, it's really impressive and I love how it gets steadily more intense as the episode goes on. Like, he continues to look more and more deranged,
and he looks like he hasn't slept.
That's either pure direction or that was a performance choice. And maybe that was part of the makeup's direction as well. But I really think a lot of what makes this work is that combination of the performance with the makeup. Kind of like to what we said about Jamie Campbell Bower in Chapter 7. Like, there's a lot of that happening with Jason in this episode too. And also, I mean, I know I do this all the time. It's all the elements working well together. But it is, because that shot when he turns around to Andy and says, "What?" You know, just the way it's lit. There's all these harsh shadows on his face, but you still get this like really sharp view of his eyes. Like, it's all very well conveyed with only a few, like, not that much screen time.
I have seen and heard people say that they feel like Jason is maybe a little bit too broad, maybe a stereotype, or like, little bit too Gaston, basically. But I don't know. I find him to be very realistic. I find him to be chillingly realistic. He has all of the hallmarks of being a like dyed-in-the-wool white supremacist. And when they being white supremacists, when they are challenged, they go bananas. This is the kind of energy that they bring. And so I think it's very appropriate for them to characterize him this way.
Meanwhile, in Russia, Hopper relates how his phone call went with Stinson and that Elle went off to fight some evil in Hawkins along with Joyce's kids. She says that Owens is indisposed, which is just vague enough to leave us wondering if that's code for dead or genuinely just otherwise occupied, like potentially still getting patched up. And weirdly, I like the ambiguity of that, which may surprise some of our listeners. But I would, in spite of everything, I would like Owens to come back in season 5, because I just think, if anything, he'll be a very helpful asset to what they have to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I kind of like that they don't give it to us 100% here. I guess I like that they're not confirming that he's dead, is probably where that comes from, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, I agree, because Owens's usefulness in this season has passed. So if we were going to spend a whole lot of time on him, again, it would be spending too much time on an already overloaded season finale.
Yeah. This is when Joyce theorizes that the particles in the prison being alive means that the gate is open in Hawkins and they just have to distract the hive mind to give the kids a chance.
Joyce has a history of being extremely intuitive and of her intuition being right every time, even when she does do these backflips to get to, wild conclusions. And so in that sense, I don't have too much of a problem with it. But in other seasons, we just have more of a setup. We already know she's right when she starts saying crazy shit.
Well, we know she's right here also. The other thing is that this sequence also is it's not terribly dissimilar from the conversation that the kids had last episode. Murray's objections remind me a lot of Stephen, Robin, and Eddie's concerns, but the vibe feels different because the music is different. And I actually like that distinction a lot. And then, of course, they find the flamethrower and they plan to break back into the prison. California crew arrives at Surfer Boy Pizza. Montage commences, cross-cutting between the preparing the bath, securing Eddie's trailer, and Argyle making a pizza. Eddie and Dustin prepare for the most metal concert in the history of the world. Of course, I would be very terribly remiss if I didn't mention the behind-the-scenes clip that the Stranger writers released of this moment where they're planning it out. I will echo a lot of the sentiment that came with a lot of the retweets that I saw on that, which is like, yeah, can we get more of this?
Mm-hmm.
Quinn has the idea to sling the guitar over his shoulder. Like, if you haven't seen it, watch it. Yeah, it's great. It's a great little clip. Elsewhere in the Upside Down, Robin is convinced that she, Nancy, and Steve have gotten lost and runs ahead, leaving Nancy and Steve alone, which leads to Steve's crawling forward monologue.
I love the monologue. Like, regardless of what ends up happening between Steve and Nancy in the future, I love the monologue. I love the way that he's characterizing himself and the difference between, like, moving forward and crawling forward, I actually think is really poignant because, like, he means, on the one hand, crawling forward as in he did when he was a baby when he was learning how to walk, but also crawling forward as in, like, once I get headed in the right direction, that doesn't mean that everything is just automatically fixed and I can move forward at the pace that I want to go. No, like, I still have learning to do. I have to crawl forward.
Mm-hmm. Do you like the whole thing, including the vision that I had of me and the kids? That was true and you're there. Did you like all of that too?
I'm conflicted. I don't think that he was trying to convince her to dump Jonathan and be with him instead. I think that he was just telling her the truth of how he felt. Seeing the expression on his face, I don't think he's expecting a positive answer. I think he's just telling her how he feels. And for that reason, I do like it. Does this moment make me, like, ship them or, think that they should get back together? I don't know. And, a big part of the reason for that is because when he initially, like, floated this fantasy life and he was like, yeah, I want, like, 6 kids. Like, I don't think she wants 6 kids. So I don't know if they're compatible. Like, I think they have hella chemistry. Like, even if they do somehow become endgame and she does leave Jonathan and they do get back together, she's not going to throw caution to the wind and start making out with him in this moment. And I think she understands that that's not what he's asking for. She just, like, is absorbing kind of, like, the emotional impact of what he's saying. And I kind of take, like, the 6 nuggets comment and the you were always there kind of in context with him telling her that he's grateful to her for the influence that she has had on his life and how he does kind of wish that he had matured and grown and been better for her because he wishes that he could have treated her better. And that, I think, is really, really powerful. So all of that is to say, yes, I like it. And I'm open to them getting back together, but I'm not convinced they will. And I'm kind of cool with it either way.
So I'm still not a fan of the second half of it because I'm not a fan of the you were always there. I didn't when I first saw it. I still don't. However, there was something, one of the new things that I absorbed this time that I thought was interesting in terms of how it affects the love triangle. I'm not saying, oh, I like the love triangle now because I still don't. But what this made me think of was how much of a contrast it offers to what has been happening with Jonathan all season. Nancy doesn't know about Jonathan's conversation with Argyle, but what we have established early on is that Jonathan doesn't necessarily picture a future with Nancy. But what we learn here is that Steve does.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't believe it's even possible anymore because they've long since been broken up. In that light, I actually think that's kind of a cool setup, even in the midst, like I said, of this love triangle. I still don't fully buy all of that from Jonathan in the first place, but if that's the direction that they've taken the characters in, then this winds up as kind of a nice parallel. Kind of took some of the, like, air out of a lot of kind of a lot of my previous argument of why I didn't like this exchange. And let me be clear, I love all of the stuff about how much he appreciates, how much her giving him that thump on the head, like how much it affected him and how much it changed his life and how grateful he is for it. I love all of that. I love the metaphor of the crawling forward. I agree with you about all of that. I had been so on board for this idea that no, they were split up. Like I believed him when he said in season 3 that he wasn't in love with Nancy anymore. I liked that. I thought that was a really healthy way for them to go with that. He was still very deeply affected by everything that happened, but he's not carrying a torch for her anymore. And that then in this season, they've kind of, because I think the way Jenna phrased it in our reactions episodes of Volume 1.
The romantic in me really likes the idea of rekindling old romance. I think that's cool when you have a history and then you come back together. You have something to build on. I think that can be really cool.
I liked that idea so much that this was a more of a rediscovering and a rekindling, not a, I have an opportunity for a thing I never fully let go of. Mm-hmm. It just feels regressive in some ways. Like if he had just said, I'm grateful, and even the part about, part of me wonders if we could have made it, if that had been like all it was, if it didn't go into like the you were always there. I actually think that bolsters what she says at the end of the episode a little bit better. Her saying like, he's really grown up, he's really mature. Like that doesn't sit all that well to me with the way they handle this moment. So I'm still not a fan, but I can also admit that some of that is because I just would have preferred it. I like the idea of it being rekindled rather than he's been carrying a torch.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Because I really was. I had been really, really enjoying it. To very much to my surprise. And then this just kind of, I don't know, it kind of puts a sour note on the end of it. I wish it didn't, but yeah, Robin interrupts this moment before Nancy can respond to any of it. Obviously a homage to Han, Leia, and C-3PO from Empire Strikes Back. Mm-hmm. And then they reach the Krail house. In Russia, they go past the empty checkpoint. Murray has a bad feeling about this, speaking of Empire Strikes Back. Just as they pass, not hearing the sounds of screaming and gunfire over the radio, but Hopper still hears the gunshots and sees the flashing lights before he disappears into the tunnel. Elsewhere, Antonov and Yuri argue, and Antonov manages to get through to Yuri. Yeah, I still love this scene. I love how Antonov just cuts through Yuri's bullshit. Mm-hmm. In Hawkins, Max and Lucas have their silent exchange, which starts with the hi and ends with the plans for the movie date on Friday.
I love this scene so much. It's so sweet. It's so vulnerable. It feels like both of them have kind of like taken an exhale, you know, because they were so tense around each other. I mean, particularly Max, not because she doesn't like him and doesn't want him in her life, but because she does like him and does want him in her life, but feels like it's impossible or she shouldn't allow herself that happiness. Mm-hmm. And now she's starting to look forward, and it's just, I love it.
I love that she initiates the conversation. It's been Lucas like kind of starting a lot of the conversations between them. And granted, he is the one who asks her to the movie, but I really like that she's the one who's like, hi. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. And I love the fact that like, it's like a sound mixing thing too. Like we really hear him take that like kind of rattled breath, like when he basically holds it up and says movie Friday. And because so like there's still that like he's nervous, and I like that that's a detail they included. They didn't have to. It's such a great culmination regardless of what happens from here. It's such a beautiful place for them to end up based on, like you said, how they started. Yeah. And how he was like, come to the game. And I love the kind of, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, the showing, not telling of that he asks her and she doesn't say yes. She draws the picture.
Yeah.
And they move into the next phase. I love Nancy's take the bait, you son of a bitch. Mm-hmm. Max puts her shoes back on, shuts off the tape, and calls out to Vecna. That shot of her shutting the tape off, like I love the sound stinger on that, and like, but also the angle. It's such a cool shot.
Yeah.
With the California crew, Mike makes blackout glasses for Elle. The two of them talk. That initial interaction between them, like when she's giggling and he's teasing her or whatever, like that felt very season 1. Mm-hmm. And he's about to say I love you, and then Argyle interrupts them with the pizza, which she loves, which also felt very season 1, like her loving food.
Yeah, we all know how I feel about Elle, but I have very controversial opinions about pineapple. Not pineapple on pizza.
Yeah.
My controversial opinion is that pineapple is a punishment designed specifically to torment me. I wish I did like it because it's so good for you.
Yeah.
And it's in every fruit medley.
So I guess in this situation, you would be in Mike's position of like, no, because Elle and Argyle tease him about the pizza and Will watches them from the kitchen, followed by his heart-to-heart with Jonathan.
Yeah.
The I'll always be here. I've mellowed quite a bit about this scene since our reactions episodes. I really like it. I still want more for Will, just like in his life. I still want more for Will, and I still wish we could have gotten more than just this one scene between the two of them. But this scene is solid, and I'm really glad they included it, especially because it wasn't originally there.
I like it a lot because Jonathan is very, very much saying, I accept that you are gay, and I support you, and I love you, and I'm here for you, and you don't ever have to be afraid to talk to me about being gay. He's absolutely saying that. But on the other hand, a lot of how this speech functions is not so much saying, I know you're gay, as making room for Will to come out to him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That, I think, is kind of the brilliance of it. Because I think that Jonathan knows that Will's not quite ready to come out. And so it's not so much Jonathan saying, I accept and support you, as Jonathan saying, I will accept and support you whenever you're ready to talk about it. And I also think that this is like the first real indication, the first like glimmer of the Jonathan that we know and love.
Yes.
This season.
Yes.
And I do really like that baked into this interaction, Jonathan acknowledges that he has not been present and he has not been the brother that he wants to be to Will throughout this year. And that a lot of it has been him grappling with his own problems and getting high and running from his problems. But like just Jonathan's intuitiveness, how loving he is toward Will, how gentle he is with Will, and his very brotherly way of knowing exactly what Will needs. It's good. It's good stuff.
I wholeheartedly concur. Like I said, I didn't like this scene very much in our reactions episodes. Like when we first got it, I kind of reserve the right to have changed my mind, if that makes sense. I don't like fully take back everything I said in the moment, but in the rewatch of it, I agree with you because I love this relationship. I always have. I think that was one of the things that bummed me out so hard about the beginning of season 4 was like Jonathan is kind of has been a little bit vacant, and I like the two of them together. So it was great to kind of come back to this.
Yeah.
And Elle goes into the tub. There are screams laid into the sound mix as well, which I didn't pick up on until I watched it with my headphones, but it's freaky.
When she goes into the tub?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's supposed to indicate that she's thinking about the last time she was in the void, or that she went into Nina, and that was with the massacre. And so she's remembering that. I'm not sure, but it was just an interesting detail. I was like, that's there. She finds Max, just as Vecna in the Creel house seems to disappear. So Max starts delivering her monologue, talking to Vecna. Max even says to him, I know you can read my thoughts. And I remember wondering, doesn't he know what your actual motivation is? And
I think he must. And when he confronts Max later and says, do you think I don't know what you're doing? And do you think I don't see your friends? I think, this is a ridiculous thing to say, but in Max's place, I think I might have assumed that he would know everything, or operated from the assumption that like we can try to cover our tracks, but he might figure it out, or he may know, and just be like, what, here I am, come and get me. You know exactly what's going on in my head. What? You're not going to do it? You know?
Oh, I gotcha. Like a challenge.
Antagonizing him.
Gotcha.
You know? Which is kind of what she does. Like she's like, hey, asshole, you know? Despite knowing everything and being able to see everything, I think he probably waited to take her until she started to be vulnerable, because that's what he preys on. He preys on people's vulnerabilities.
Ooh, and she gets vulnerable, all right. I mean, she pretty much openly states suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I don't feel qualified to have that conversation. But what I like is that her talking about what happened, and this is not from like a clinical perspective, obviously. No psychologists or psychiatrists here. That's a throwback. But it reminds me of something that I feel like I've experienced, and I feel like I've heard other people that I know talk about, of how we can, about how we misremember traumatic experiences. I feel like I've heard a grief counselor talk about this, how we will do that. We will misremember it. You know, our mind will warp those memories in any number of ways, which deviate from the truth and confuse us further, which is precisely what Vecna represents and what he then proceeds to act out again through Lucas.
Yeah.
I like the way that all plays out. Like, that felt very sound to me.
Oh, yeah. I believe that Max believes that there is some truth to the lie of she just stood there. Mm-hmm. She didn't just stand there. And again, there is nothing that she could have done to help Billy. Even if she had run forward while he was being impaled, that would not have saved his life. Mm-hmm. And she, even earlier in that episode, she wasn't trying to hurt Billy. I mean, I fully believe that she wanted him out of her life permanently, and she probably did be like, I hope you get into a fucking wreck in that stupid car, you know. Which
I have to call myself out, because I said in chapter 4, like, she wanted the pain to end. She didn't want Billy to die. I mean, clearly she's talking about that. I think those are true, but I stand by the sentiment of that it's like, she didn't really want him to die. She says it, I wanted him out of my life.
Yeah.
And so it's that idea of, I don't know how to make that happen.
Right.
I mean, as soon as Lucas began speaking, it was obvious that it's Vecna, but
we know immediately, but she doesn't. And the way that she talks to him when she thinks that he's still Lucas is heartbreaking and like so accurate to her character. And I love it. And I also love and admire that when she does clock that he's Vecna, she's able to hit him when he still looks like Lucas to her.
Yeah.
Because that is not easy.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I mean, damn, Caleb McLaughlin.
I know.
Like, he really captures the portrayal of someone being puppeted. And that's also due to the sound mix. Like, the overlaying of Jamie Campbell Bower's voice with McLaughlin's, the Dutch angles, the makeup, the context in his eyes. But McLaughlin sells the shit out of it.
He does. This episode is like his episode.
Concurrently, at least in theory, Elle enters Max's mind, landing in a memory of a skate park. And then also in the sound mix here, the skateboard sounds are like laced with those like added like warped effects, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Just to give it that slightly otherworldly feel. Like, it doesn't feel like we're just in this place. I thought that was a nice touch, because there's nothing visual really that gives that away. Erica confirms to the others, initiate phase 3. We get Eddie's dedication. Chrissy, this is for you. Love it.
Yes.
And he commences with Master of Puppets, which does indeed draw the bats away from the upside down Creel house. I mean, what's to say about this that hasn't already been said?
It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good.
Most metal ever.
This is another thing where it would be remiss of me to not at least say one quick thing about how much love there has been from Metallica since this aired. Like, they have been so supportive and cool and enthusiastic. Just, I mean, what I've seen in passing, like, about the whole thing, like, it's so cute. I love it. I love their support, and them, and like, this is awesome. Like, I just think that's great.
No, I love it too. And I love that it's especially cool to see how welcoming they have been to new fans, because, it would be easy, because metal is like its own like subculture, for either fans or for the band themselves to be kind of like roll their eyes or, that kind of thing. But that has not been the energy at all that I have seen either from the band or from fans, I'm happy to say. And I have a buddy who just went to a Metallica concert quite recently. And so, of course, the first question I asked was, did they play Master of Puppets? And she was like, yeah, no, they absolutely did. It was their closing song, and they had like Stranger Things like footage in the background as they were playing it. And I was like, that's adorable.
I'm waving my hands around in enthusiasm. Like, I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love too, like, how impactful this moment is, like, outside of the series itself, like how iconic this moment has become, like when it's really not very long.
Yeah.
Like that was something that, like, I remembered this moment as being like kind of this long sequence. It's not. It's actually fairly short, but boy, does it make an impact.
But it sticks out because it's so cool. I love that Eddie gets to have his moment. I love that he says, Chrissy, this is for you. It's so impactful to him. And, you know, that he gets to do the damn thing and that it's successful, that it works and that he's able to help his friends. And I love the way Dustin looks at him throughout this entire sequence with just this like grin, and he's just like so happy for Eddie and just like looks up to Eddie so much, and it's awesome.
Yep. Montage. The Hawkins trio moves in while Max tries to make a break for it. Of course, all of this is still underscored by Master of Puppets. You know, Max is blocked at every turn, including being confronted by memories of the sauna test while the Tigers arrive and give chase to Erica. It's interesting, too, because having this be underscored by Master of Puppets is so interesting because it gives it a very different energy. And I like that because that kind of like what I said way back in the beginning of the season about how like the scene between Nancy and Wayne had this like kind of different style to it. This kind of felt that way. Like, I don't feel like we've seen a montage or like a sequence like this with quite, because we haven't really had like an out metal song for one thing, but just it gives it this whole different vibe. And I really, really like that. And also, every time I see this episode, I am convinced that Jason is going to ram his Jeep into the playground equipment.
Same.
And it's always a relief, but a surprise when he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, short-lived relief.
Well, yeah.
Given that Andy football tackles Erica.
Yes.
It's just...
And then, yeah, the montage ends because Max concentrates and remembers the snowball, which propels her to the Hawkins Middle School gym. And the edit there matched with that final guitar riff is superb. Like, that is one of my favorite edits in the entire show. I love it. It's so great. But with that, like, the way that they do that dolly shot out, it's fantastic. The Russia trio get back to the prison. Marie doesn't get any help up, by the way. And they find the cages are all empty. Naturally, Hop fires up the flamethrower.
Yep.
They find the major, who tells them what happened. The monster got in, the gunfire shattered the tanks, and the particles, the shadow they call it, went into them.
We could have told them, don't use gunfire on the monsters. It don't work.
I mean, and the thing I find really interesting is that them referring to it as the shadow, like they called it the shadow monster in season 2. But of course, this is all reminiscent of the other massacre at Hawkins Lab from season 2. Again, like, I don't love this whole arc conceptually.
Right.
But I really like the way they handle all of this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still feel the way I did at the beginning of the season. All of this stuff is really good. It's just a completely separate movie, you know?
Yeah. Try though they do to make it feel connected.
Yeah.
The Hawkins trio, meanwhile, navigate the entranceway to the Creel house, dodging vines. Even Robin, after some encouragement from Nancy. And 11 finds a young Max in the memory, which is so wonderfully in character. Just that one exchange between her and that skater bro. Like, shouldn't you be playing with dolls? Shouldn't you bag your face? Like, I love Max. I love Max. I love her. Because then she flips him the bird, too. Like,
She's like 9 years old in this clip.
And I love Elle's response to that. Max. She just starts calling out to her. Like, oh, yeah, that's her.
Yep.
But everything seems normal until Elle spots the DJ table on the bridge. Blood balloons begin exploding. I asked my coworker, the creative director for the company that I work for, he's a visual effects artist, and I wanted his perspective on how did he think they did this effect with the blood balloons. I was like, does this look practical or does this look like it's digital or a combination? We watched the clip together, and he actually was like, we watched it a few times, and his overall takeaway was he believes that the first balloon behind Max might have been rigged to pop with real prop blood based on the way that the tablecloth kind of puckers and pulls in, and the fact that like it's the way that the blood explodes, it does get on like the flowers on the centerpiece. There's splatter, and he was like, maybe with a little digital enhancement, but the rest of the balloons throughout the gym look a little too digital. You know, he said the balloons might have been rigged to pop, but the blood looks too, and I quote, pretty to be real. Like, it kind of fountains and, like, you know, really goes everywhere in a way that he was like, squibs don't tend to look that way. But it's very convincing, though, he said. Like, it's part of the reason it's a little tough to tell is because if it is all digital, they do a really good job with it. Like, in terms of its reflective quality and the where it lands. But, like, on a lot of, like, the other balloon that pops on the table, he's like, he pointed out, like, there's no blood splatter on the flowers. So, little things like that. But I just was curious because I was like, it looks pretty seamless to me.
Yeah.
The music switches to Dream a Little Dream of Me. The whole room darkens and starts to rot, which is gross, but kind of cool.
Yeah.
In the attic, Lucas starts to worry and signals for Erica, who isn't there because, as you mentioned, Andy has tackled her and he threatens to break her arms.
Yeah. Again, like, they're both white supremacists.
Yeah. And of course, that's when Jason arrives.
Yeah.
And he focuses on Max at first. Is this what you did to Chrissy? And then, riled up, points his gun at Lucas. Screams he turned around, demands he empties his pockets.
That's so much. That's so much there. Yep.
Demanding to wake up Max or he'll kill Lucas. And I'm just like, oh, we're not killers like Eddie, huh? Russia Trio make their way back to the arena, or the pit, as Hopper calls it. And Hopper makes a plan to be the bait, while Murray rains fire from above and Joyce acts as jailer. Hopper surveys the cameras and Joyce flashes back to Bob, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
That they kind of insinuate that she's thinking about him there.
I do too, at least in part because what does end up happening when the Demodog attacks him is it's such a parallel of what happened to Bob. And, you know, it's thanks to her determination to not have another funeral that Hop survives. Because, you know, he was holding the Demodog's mouth shut for a certain amount of time. He couldn't do that indefinitely. He needed help.
I like to, since you mentioned the thing about I'm not going to another funeral, I actually really, really appreciate that line, especially because that's like, to me, that says a lot more than I can't just watch you die. That's like, I have been to Will's funeral. I have been to Bob's funeral. I've also been to your funeral.
I'm not having another funeral.
So it speaks to just more than their romantic connection. It's like, I have dealt with too much loss.
Yeah.
In the Upside Down, Eddie and Dustin fend off the bats as they burrow into the vent. And like all the other ish about this aside, like this did give me season 2 vibes again. Like in the junkyard, like even down to the way that they're tensely listening and they hear the bats on the roof, like they heard the Demodog on the roof of the bus before the bats get into the vent. But even that like reminded me of like when the Demodog like looks down through the open hatch in the bus roof.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of that. Hawkins trio dodge vines up the stairs and draw weapons, but are stopped from entering the attic with an earthquake, which trips a vine and Robin gets pinned to the wall, followed by Steve and then Nancy. This is another example of like, I'm going to cite the shot by shot that Kiri and Hawk did. I'll put the link for that in the show notes because, you know, I won't repeat the whole thing, but I really recommend that if you haven't seen it, definitely do, because as we talk about this, I'll mention a couple of my favorite points, but it's a great like companion piece to this sequence.
So I have absolutely no problem with the vines detecting them and, you know, incapacitating them. I think it's probably unrealistic just given the amount of vines that there were, that they would be able to get all the way up to the attic and into the lair without being detected. But I have to say, I find the earthquake really hokey because Dustin and Eddie don't feel it. We don't feel any earthquakes before or after that. It's just this one. Also, like, I don't think that the actors were given enough, like, time or direction because they basically just kind of, like, sway in place.
They talk about that in the video.
So every time that I watch that, I'm just like, yeah, okay. And then the vines get them, you know.
On our first watch, you said, you know, Renee and I, like, made some noise, like, oh, no. And you were like, he, meaning Vecna, he has to know they're there. Like, it wouldn't be believable if he didn't.
Right. Yeah.
Which isn't fully established here, but you absolutely called it because we do get it confirmed in a few scenes.
Yeah.
There was an outtake where he accidentally broke a camera lens. I don't remember how I discovered it, but I found it, I think through one of the Stranger Things Instagram accounts, but the cinematographer actually like posted the clip because Kiri mentions in the video, like you could see the whole thing on playback. the cinematographer, probably via Netflix, they posted the actual clip that he mentions.
Oh, wow.
But it was so great because the cinematographer was like, it was okay. We all thought it was great. It did look really cool. We bear Joe Keery no ill will because of this. Like, no one was mad at him. It's fine, which was great. That was in really great taste, I thought, to do that.
Very much so. And I think it's one of those things where I would far, far, far rather a lens crack and nobody get hurt than a person get hurt or the entire camera break or like shit happens. Like, you put in all of the safety protocol possible to make sure that the least amount of shit possible happens, but shit happens. And of course he didn't do it on purpose and, all the things.
Great case in point, like the whole thing that happened when they did the van flip in season 1, like that destroyed an entire camera. Mm-hmm. But like the whole thing here of like, I just thought it was really kind of cool that they decided to kind of go out of their way to do that.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. In Russia, Hopper finds the demodog, starts to lead him away. In the Upside Down, Eddie blocks the vent, but the bats get in through another one. They shut the door. They know it won't hold. Dustin climbs back through the gate, and Eddie starts to follow, then stops and cuts the rope to buy more time. Despite Dustin's shouts of protest, Eddie bolts from the trailer and hops on the bike, leading the bats away. We're going to talk more about Eddie's death next, probably in our next episode, but as far as his whole arc is concerned, up to this point, this part actually works for me. Because if there is this insistence of we have to have Eddie have this arc where he overcomes, I'm going to put massive air quotes around this, his cowardice to prove that he's brave, even to himself, we accomplish Eddie's need not to run here. There is no need for him to die after this. I would argue that he proves that he is brave. He does. He puts himself at tremendous risk here. He could have run, but he didn't. He can't. He can't bring himself to. My thought has always been that what I think they're trying to establish here is that if he climbs through the gate after Dustin, yes, there's this fact that then they're not there to potentially lead the bats back, if that's needed. He's going to like maintain his post, as it were. But also that maybe there's this added aspect of what's to stop the bats from following them into the right side up? And he sees either of those dangers as more important than his own safety. So, like Hopper, like Max, makes himself the bait. And especially if we're going, again, with that whole I ran motif, then him making a run for it here is actually perfect. It's even downright poetic without him having to die. And furthermore, the idea of him choosing to stay and not run is perfectly clear. Without the spoon-feedy cutaways and flashbacks and echoes of his previous statements, the task of having him overcome that obstacle, insofar as they and Eddie feel the need to do that, it's accomplished here. Done. Good. Great. Seriously.
If he leads the bats away, continues to buy more time, if he had just been successful in doing that,
right,
I would totally be on board with him doing this. He has nothing to redeem. So he doesn't need to, need to redeem himself.
Yeah.
But I understand that he feels that he has something to redeem himself for. And I think that this would be a way to do that. But my problem is that he dies.
I actually think this scene would have worked even without the arc of him like feeling like he's a coward and always runs. Mm-hmm. Like it works fine. The idea of like him like taking stock of what's happening and being like, I can't just bail. I can't do that. That works really well for me. Yeah. But this is when, in Max's mind, Vecna finally gets in and reveals that he knew her plan the whole time, showing her, I think, what's happening elsewhere before he pins her to the wall.
Yeah.
Lucas tries to tell Jason what's going on, but Jason doesn't believe it. Surprise, surprise. Then he says, Chrissy would have come to me, not Eddie. And there it is.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's logical for him to think, oh, my girlfriend would have come to me if she had a problem versus going to somebody else. Is he correct? No. But there's layers to it because he didn't know her. So much of it is based on his ego and based on his jealousy. Everything, like, he is jumping through all kind of hoops to, like, blame it on satanic rituals and, this, that, and the other thing. But really, what this is really about is that he's jealous of Eddie. Mm-hmm. and thinks that Chrissy was cheating on him with Eddie.
Well, either that or the idea that he was wrong is inconceivable.
Yeah.
And he simply cannot accept it. He just can't.
Yeah.
His ego won't let him.
Yeah.
But that, of course, is followed by the I never should have let you in. I never should have knocked. And it's just like, yes.
And I'm reminded of some of the analysis that I have seen from Black fans of the show who have talked about like having these kinds of moments and how like accurate it felt and how like the performance is just fantastic. Just how Caleb McLaughlin like delivers that line is just amazing.
Like to the point where considering that a lot of time the Duffers commentary isn't usually this good.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder if they had some consultation on this one.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, in their standoff, Lucas rushes Jason, who does shoot, and the gunshot allows Erica to get away. Crit hit. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I love that Lucas wasn't hit.
Yes.
But one of the things that I really, really love about the extended, because I basically consider like from the moment that Jason steps foot in the room as when the fight sequence begins, even though that's not when they start exchanging blows. But one of the things that I love about this extended fight sequence is that he fires the gun. Mm-hmm. His intention is to kill Lucas. He has every intention of murdering Lucas.
There's nothing to hold him back.
No.
He is that far gone. He is that unhinged. There's no one to power check him at that point. And that's why he's so dangerous, which is what we've been saying all season. And they don't leave it ambiguous is what I like about it. It's not like, well, we could have inferred that he was going to. It's like, no, the gun goes off.
Yeah.
So in my notes, I have Vecna grandstands to Max long enough for Elle to arrive and stop him before he can kill her. Because that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean,
making a meal out of it.
He likes to monologue. He's a big monologuer.
He's like, I've got this voice. Of course you want to hear the sound of it, you know.
Well, he's been stuck in the upside down. The only things you've been able to talk to is the fucking mind flayer and the demogorgons. He's like, I can't believe someone can actually understand my words. This is amazing.
And actually, that feels like a good moment for me to say, like, Vecna really, on this watch, I was like, I'm sure someone else has made this observation already, but this time, Vecna really sounds a lot like the One Ring and Sauron from the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy. So shout out to Alan Howard, the English actor who provided the voice for both Sauron and the One Ring in Fellowship and Return of the King. And he passed away in 2015. So this whole bit, when Vecna surged backwards, I remember that day watching it being like, fuck yeah, like this, like it's a fist pumping moment and still is, frankly. And I enjoyed a lot. I enjoy this moment, you know, you and her going, hi. But then she throws him.
Yeah.
So again, this is probably not a hot take, but we've seen her do that neck twitch to kill people. So why
didn't she just kill him?
He is completely vulnerable.
Yeah.
To borrow a line from the Italian Job, you just blew the best element you had going for you. You just blew the element of surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I enjoy this moment, because I do enjoy the way it lands, but it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. Not only does it not make sense that she didn't go in for the kill, because, like, we're not having tea, okay?
No,
It also doesn't make sense that she expends all this power, overpowers him, sends him packing, and that, like, she can do whatever to him, and he's not the least bit, like, hurt or affected. Mm-hmm. But then I don't understand how she kicks all this ass and then he immediately overpowers her to the point that she's just like submissive and like sobbing and begging.
Yep.
What happened? You know, it's not even like he went into her mind and started messing with her mind. It is just as if we're supposed to believe that he completely overpowered her totally and immediately. And like we saw all the way back when she was 9 years old that he had her up and was starting to like, you know, bend her limbs and so on. And even then, she came back from that.
She overpowered him, yeah.
And overpowered him and sent him to hell, essentially. So literally none of this happens for any reason other than the script says so. And I don't even understand why the script says so.
I mean, well, for one thing, we have more exposition they want to convey, that we have a whole grand finale with all these multiple arcs that are taking place, but the only other thing that I could reasonably come up with, so, listeners, if we're missing some vital piece, please chime in, send us an email about this. But the only thing I could figure is that maybe there's an aspect of Elle is trying to keep him distracted. That she's doing kind of her own version of what Eddie was doing with Master of Puppets. She's trying to be like, look at me, don't look at, because she knows the whole plan from chapter 8. The whole plan is they're going in for flambe. So she's like, I need to keep you busy. Look at me. Like, let's have our fight.
But then you would extend the fight, though.
Well, so that was my reaction back in 2022 was, I just wish this was more of a fight. Because it's like my issue has always been, we just saw 11 take down a helicopter.
Yeah.
We, as you pointed out, at 9, she cast Banish, for crying out loud. So the idea of this, it really ends up feeling in this episode like it's a question of first come, first serve, almost like whoever can get to it first, rather than who is the more powerful. Like, once you're locked in, once you have somebody in their control, you don't have any way to counteract it. And I don't feel like that's consistent with some of the other things we've seen before.
Yeah.
I think they might be going for the idea here that she's feeling like she's young again, and that's what, but if that's what they're going for, it's not successful.
It's not conveyed.
I don't, because she's not that kid anymore. I understand that there are aspects of it that might be evoked because memories can do that to you. But at the same time, I just think this would have been a lot more successful if she'd been more pissed off.
She would have been. Not only is he invading the mind of her best friend, he is threatening her entire world. I don't believe in a version of Elle that would just crumble emotionally under that weight.
Yeah. You know, if you can't end the fight right here, you know, for whatever their reason is for having Elle not just kill him immediately, then Vecna either needed to be more aware of her or it needed to be more of a fight. Yeah. Honestly, like thinking about like Pirates of the Caribbean, like the first one, Curse of the Black Pearl, when Jack fights Barbossa, when he has the coin, he has no intention of like winning or what. I mean, he intends to hopefully kill him at the end of it once the curse is lifted. Yeah. But there's even the line about what now, Jack Sparrow, we'd be too, like locked in this battle for Kingdom Come. It's like, or you could surrender. Like, it's just about keeping Barbossa busy. Yeah. And I'm like, I honestly think they could have had Elle do the same thing. I mean, because I do like the idea that he fancies himself invincible at this point, but it doesn't work for everything that follows. Yeah. This is when Dustin jumps back through the gate and breaks his ankle. Eddie gets knocked off the bike. Instead of continuing to run, we get the flashbacks and memories, and this is where they really gild that lily. Yeah, this is Eddie stops, turns, and like makes a stand against the bats, which like this is when they converge and attack him. And just all of these elements, it's so heavy-handed. Like, that's the other thing that bugs me about it. Like, it's tragic and not in a good way. In Russia, Hopper runs from the Demodog, and that's when Joyce watches in horror. She looks up, she sees the rack of the weapons on the wall. In Hawkins, Erica sprints back to the house, and she's locked out of the attic, while Jason just wails on Lucas, hitting him over the head with a vase. The fact that Jason locked the attic door speaks volumes. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if they even intended it to, but because also it says to me as well that Jason was so confident that he was more powerful than whatever was up in that attic that he was willing to lock himself in with it.
Jason apparently fully believes Eddie and the Hellfire Club are a satanic cult that have access to supernatural powers from hell, which is a ridiculous fucking thing to say, but this is what he believes or professes to believe. So you're telling me that you really think that your little, whatever it is, a Colt 45 or whatever, is more powerful than all of the monsters of hell?
When he watched Patrick die.
He watched you don't think anything well, he does think, like, you think you can overpower what killed your friend with a Colt 45?
My guess is he might be thinking that, like, Eddie's in the attic, and he's like, I shoot Eddie, Eddie dies, we're done. That's kind of my theory about it all, but I don't know. Yeah, just the arrogance of it. Yeah. And in Max's mind, Elle rushes over to her for the "Are you real? I piggybacked from a pizza dough freezer" exchange, which is followed by the now very memeable, very gifable moment of Vecna rising up out of the broken bleachers.
Yeah.
And then, this is when they face off in the center of the gym. You know, she warns, if you touch her again, I will kill you. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vecna throws Elle into the super red mindscape lair and ties her up while he carries in an unconscious Max. And then we get Elle telling him that Papa's dead, and she delivers this like mini speech about how Henry is not a monster, but Brenner was, and he made Henry into this.
Yeah, I don't understand any
of this. I agree with you. I don't get the crying. I don't get the crucifixion pose.
No.
And I don't see how this is a compelling argument.
It's not.
And to circle back to the conversation that was had between Eleven and Brenner in chapter 8, like that conversation aged really well to me. She's angry, she's upset, she's emotional. I'm like, where is that energy? Why is that energy not here? I don't know if this is supposed to be an act.
Yeah.
And Vecna disagrees with her. She turned him into this, not Brenner. Followed, of course, though, by his explaining the final piece of the puzzle, that he is also the Mind Flayer. I'm still conflicted about this. Like, I on the one hand, I like the simplicity of it, kind of the streamlining of it all. Like, it's not all these 500 different monsters. It's just been him. But at the same time, it feels weirdly disappointing. Like, convenient somehow. Like, I don't know how to, circle that square, because I do both like it and dislike it at the same time.
Yeah.
However, that wide shot of Henry and the Mind Flayer, it's pretty glorious. It's a great shot.
Oh, it's very pretty.
Just the sense of scale, it's just really beautifully done. We get the cutaway from season 3 with Billy Flayer saying, we've been building it for you. And that made me wonder, how much did the Duffer Brothers tell Dacre Montgomery while filming that bit? Like, that's it. That was something where I was like, I wonder if they gave him some kind of like insider information. Elle says that he doesn't have to do this, which goes over just about as well as it did when Lucas said the exact same thing to Jason.
Yeah.
Because they say almost verbatim the same line.
And it makes sense when Lucas does it.
Yes.
Because, like, from Lucas's perspective, there is some glimmer of hope of getting through to Jason and being like, hey, maybe don't shoot somebody just for funsies, But with Vecna, it's like, he's been working toward this for like years and years. What do you mean you don't have to do this? He wants to do this. Doing this has been his goal this whole time.
There's a level of like believability that Elle would say something. I just wish they'd maybe found something else for her to say. I don't know. Yeah, this is when VH1 tells her that they're all losing. There's nothing she can do to stop it now. Another montage commences. Jason continues to beat up Lucas, choking him. Eddie is also strangled by the bats and then restrained, then impaled. Hopper is tackled by the Demodog. Nancy, Steve, and Robin are still trapped and choking on the wall. This is actually the moment where I'm like, if you're going to have Elle start crying, this was the moment where I thought it would have worked for me.
Yeah.
And Vecna says, I'll be there to pick up the pieces, and I'd hope to have you by my side, but now I'll just want you to watch. Gross. It's gross, man. He goes to the now awake Max and proceeds with the process that we've watched happen all season. In the attic, she rises up, and Lucas can't even call out to her. This is then at Surfer Boy Pizza, they take Elle out of the tank when she starts suffocating. Real connecting thread of the characters this season not being able to breathe, I noticed. Yeah. I like the detail, too, that Mike throws the glasses off of her, first. Will reminds Mike that he's the heart, and then this is when we get Mike's monologue, when he finally tells her he loves her.
I don't understand the logic of Mike's speech and the effect that it has on her. I know that she loves Mike. I know that she needs Mike because she loves him. But I don't think that hearing I love you from him is something that she is missing in order to want to kick Vecna's ass.
There are things I like about the speech, the monologue, in kind of in its own context, I do actually really love Wolfhardt's performance of it.
Yes.
Like, I love the way it's shot. I like the way they visually treat him. I like the way that they present him. They give him this really beautiful close-up. They light it really well. They really let Mike have the moment, right? And I do actually appreciate that. I love how they work into this, because these were some of the things that we did talk about at the beginning of the season. The lines like, I love you on your good days, bad days, with powers, without powers. I like that they work all that in. And I like that he also says, I love you so early in the speech. They don't have him drag it out again. It's like, no, he just says it. But I also don't really love this. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I really do think what they were going for and really didn't succeed with, I don't think, is this idea that they're trying to shift from anger to love as her motivator. I think that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt. You know, I mean, we joked about it. I think in previous seasons, maybe this season, I'm trying to remember when we brought it up, but the whole Monsters Inc. of it all, the idea of that the laughter is more powerful than fear. Again, to cite the whole her remembering her birth and her mother saying, I love you, like, okay, then in this montage, it needed to be all of the people she loves. It needed to be, Mike should have also said, like, I love you, Will loves you, like, you are so loved, to remind her, it's not just your mother who you lost. There was Hopper, there's Will, there's Joyce, there's Max, like, all of us love you. Yeah. Maybe that would have been too saccharine. I don't know.
I don't think so, no. I think it would have been less saccharine, and I think it would have been more impactful. My counterpoint to, like, oh, this is her, like, moving from anger to love. Her anger comes from her love. Her anger comes from her compassion, empathy, like we've talked about. Yeah. And I really, really, really agree with you. It would have been more thematically appropriate if Mike had been like, we love you. We love you no matter what. We love you on your good days. Yeah. We love you on your bad days. We love you without your powers.
Yeah.
That, I think, would be better, at least in part, because they've got themselves in a little bit of a catch-22 position, because I think that they're both trying to sort of recreate episode 4, in which Max has where it's very effective, and Max has her montage of everything that she has to live for. But I also think that they're calling on season 2 Mike's speech to Will about their history together and how much Mike loves Will. And I appreciate the effort of both of those. This speech would not bother me if Mike's actions had been different throughout the season. I just find that I don't like the whole thing of, like, Mike being emotionally distant and assuming that she's going to break up with him and so on and so forth. After everything that happened in season 2, where he thought she was dead and he was still holding on to her, and I don't understand the direction that they have taken with Mike and Elle's relationship if they intend to keep them together as a couple. So, like, I understand, like, people, especially when you meet someone and you meet your first love so young that you grow up and grow apart. Totally understand that. Yeah. It's painful. It's sad, but I do respect it a lot. But having them still be soulmates with the way that he has treated her, I just don't believe it.
I've loved you since the day I met you. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it's unfounded. I just personally, I'm not as big of a fan of the idea of love at first sight, especially in this context. Not unlike the thing with Brenner. I liked the idea that it started in one place and it grew and evolved. Mm-hmm. I'm just generally more a fan of that structure than it's been this the whole time. Yeah. I don't know. So,
well, there's another aspect to that. Mike has evolved into a very selfish character. I'm not going to tell you how I feel about you because I assume that you are going to leave me and I want to protect myself. I'm not saying it's not human and relatable, but I am saying it's a very selfish way to treat someone that you love. And another reason for me saying that there is a mismatch between Mike's words and Mike's actions is Mike and Will have that big heart-to-heart two big heart-to-hearts where Mike says, hey, I was a jerk to you. I need to be a better best friend to you because you are my best friend. And then later on in the season, when Will gives him the painting, they have another big heart-to-heart. And then he tells Elle, in front of Will that he feels that his life began and that he has loved her from the moment that he laid eyes on her the day that Will was kidnapped by the Demogorgon. I'm not saying it can't be true, not least because if you take some aspects of it out of it, yeah, that was the day that the whole adventure began. That was the day that he first learned that there's more to the world than what he thought there was. That was the day that, began the journey of him learning about what the Upside Down was and the journey to getting Will back and so on and so forth. But there is something very fundamentally selfish about saying it in that way. I can't live without you.
Yeah, it's messy. I mean, because the way I read that is like, right, so forget Lucas and Dustin, forget your friendships, forget Nancy, forget your parents. Like, just your life had no meaning before that. Like, it's just such a land of absolute statement that I don't buy it. I don't buy that as the person that we knew in season 1. The other thing is statements like this, not only is it like land of absolutes, but it really feels like heat of the moment, not long-term, well-established, deep-down belief kind of stuff. Like, yeah. And which is what I think this monologue is intended to be. This is not off the cuff. These are things he has been holding on to. Mm-hmm. But yet, even because of the nature of, I have to shout this at you because you're dying and I need you to know, like, it ends up having this energy that, again, maybe they felt like it was going to be too similar to Steve's confession. For all that I said about it, Steve's works a lot better.
I do love Wolfhard's delivery. To echo your point, I very much agree with that. I love the delivery, especially of the moment when he's so desperate and saying, get out, get out, get out. And then he was like, help me get her out of the tub. And they like take her out of the tub. There's something about that moment that I really, really like, both like narratively and like in his performance.
And there's even aspects of it like that feel very much like the Mike that I know.
Yeah.
I know that Mike gets a lot of critique and criticism character-wise, and there's a lot of like, I think a lot of fans still really like him and really appreciate him and value him, and honestly, I do too. Mm-hmm. I just feel like they've kind of backed themselves into a corner with him, with his character, and I think, so the fact that they're trying gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, that monologue ends with him telling her to fight, and it reaches her. Lucas gets out of Jason's grip, and he hits back, which is a great moment.
Oh, I love that moment.
It's so satisfying. But unfortunately not quick enough to save Max. Hopper is barely holding off the Demodog. Eddie's dying. Dustin is struggling to get to him. Mike yells, fight, one last time. Elle screams. She falls. Free of Vecna's vines. We cut to black at 1 hour and 34 minutes into the episode. That's where we're going to pause for this episode. And we're going to come back in 2 weeks for the resolution of this chapter. So because of that, we're going to save like our final thought segment for the end of next episode. I'll just say that at this point in the episode, when it cut to black, and even a bit before, on that first watch, I was pretty sold on the hopelessness.
Yeah.
I was like, how will they get out of this?
Yeah.
And more importantly, how can they wrap all this up by the end of the episode?
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's a lot of balls in the air. There's a lot of plates spinning. But yeah, we'll address whether or not they did and how well they accomplished it next time. So this will conclude part 1 of our contemplation on chapter 9, the Piggyback. As always, thank you for listening. The links to our socials are in the show notes, TikTok, Instagram, plus our email. And if you're a fan of our pod, consider rating and reviewing us. Coffee and Contemplation is available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, most metal ever! Over and out.
Argyle for president. But
I don't know if I can totally co-sign that.
I mean,
but I do love him.
Compared to some of the other candidates we've had in recent years.
Well, that's fair. Yeah.
I bet you he'd legalize marijuana.
Well.
Anyway, moving along.
Moving right along. I think that's going to be our outtake clip right there.